Welcome to the Deep Dive, the show where we take a stack of sources, articles, and research and really boil it all down to make complex topics instantly understandable.
Making you sound like the smartest person in the room.
Exactly. And today, we're embarking on a truly unique journey, I think. We're diving into the mind of Fernando Pessoa.
Ah, Pessoa. A fascinating choice.
Right. Widely considered one of the 20th century's most mysterious, maybe most groundbreaking literary figures. And specifically, we're going to explore his masterpiece, the Book of Disquiet, which, interestingly, was only published after he died.
Posthumously, yeah.
Well,
Which already tells you something about him.
it really does. So our mission today is pretty clear. We want to dive deep into Pessoa's, fascinating life, his utterly unique approach to literature, and we'll definitely unpack that and the profound, sometimes unsettling ideas packed into the Book of Disquiet.
And it's worth saying, this book, it hits differently.
Definitely. And look, if you're new to philosophy, or maybe you've heard the name Pessoa but don't know much, this deep dive is absolutely for you. We're going to make this super accessible, clear definitions, relatable examples, break it all down step by step. We want you to really get why this guy and this book are so important and, frankly, so revolutionary.
That's a great approach. Because delving into Pessoa, it really does feel a bit like uncovering buried treasure, doesn't it? You're unearthing something hidden.
Totally.
And it sets the stage perfectly for the Book of Disquiet itself. What's so striking about it right from the start is that it wasn't really meant to be a single book. Not in the way we usually think of one anyway.
Right. It wasn't written A to Z.
No, exactly. It's more like a lifetime accumulation of fragments.
Yeah.
Observations, thoughts, philosophical ideas, just jotted down over years and years, only pieced together, long after he was gone.
Which is wild.
It is. And it raises this really important question right away. What kind of mind, what kind of person creates a work like this? A work that seems to resist any neat category and seems written almost purely for himself. What must that inner world have been like?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And to even begin to answer that, I think we need to start with the man himself, the enigma that was Fernando Pessoa.
Let's do it.
Okay, so he was born in Lisbon, Portugal, back in 1888. And, on the surface, his early life seems pretty ordinary for someone who'd become a literary giant.
Nothing too unusual at first glance.
But then when he was just 7 years old, things took a really significant turn. His father died and his mother remarried. Her new husband was the Portuguese consul over in Durban, South Africa, so Pessoa moves there.
Wow, okay. South Africa, that's a big shift.
A huge shift. He lived in Durban for 9 years, basically from age 7 to 17, his formative years.
That's crucial.
Absolutely. And this period wasn't just, a change of scenery, it was deeply formative. He became completely fluent in English, like native level fluent. And he developed this intense love for English literature. We're talking Shakespeare, Milton, the classics. He devoured them.
Though his literary roots were almost as much English as Portuguese then.
You could say that. In fact, get this, his very first collections of poems, his early journals, he wrote them entirely in English.
No kidding. That's fascinating.
Isn't it? And this whole experience being Portuguese but growing up immersed in English language and culture, far from home, it seems to have really contributed to this lifelong feeling he had of being a permanent outsider.
That makes sense. Feeling like you don't quite belong anywhere fully.
Exactly. Imagine that feeling looking back at your homeland from a distance through this sort of linguistic and cultural filter. It seems like this early displacement really fueled a deep introspection, a turning inward, and that became such a defining feature of his later work.
Yeah, I can absolutely see how that sense of being an outsider, plus his deep connection to English literature, his Anglophilia, could have powered that intense internal focus. And it probably laid the groundwork for his later literary innovations, too. But what's also fascinating here, just as you mentioned the inner world, is the incredible contrast with his day job. His professional life was incredibly humble, almost mundane.
Right. What did he actually do for a living?
Despite this vast, teeming inner world we're talking about, he earned his keep as a commercial translator, a correspondence clerk, basically.
Seriously?
Yeah. He spent his days writing business letters in English and French for Portuguese companies. Think about that contrast for a second. The man who'd become this giant of modernism was, drafting polite corporate emails day in, day out.
That's almost hard to picture.
It really is. And descriptions of how he looked, I kind of paint this picture too. People described him as mustachioed, dapper, always with a hat and a tie. L'homme moyen sensuel, the average sensual man.
So very respectable looking,
Oh,
proper.
totally.
Yeah.
One source calls him the perfect dry functionary, just perfectly unremarkable on the outside.
Wow.
And this source suggests something really interesting, that this mundane, almost boring exterior seemed necessary to curb the teeming, abundant life of the mind within.
So the boring job was like a container, a way to manage the internal chaos.
That's the idea. It's such a powerful image, isn't it? This idea that the quiet conformity, the routine, was maybe a vital restraint, a way to hold back the, I don't know, the sheer volcanic energy of his creativity simmering just beneath the surface.
Yeah.
It's that tension between inner and outer life, just perfectly embodied, whole universe hidden behind a plain suit and tie.
It really is a staggering contrast, because during his actual life, Pessoa was, and this is putting it mildly, virtually unknown.
Completely obscure.
He actively avoided the limelight, avoided society, the literary scene. The source calls him a very minor figure on the fringes of the Lisbon artistic and intellectual scene. Basically, a nobody in the public eye.
Published almost nothing himself.
Exactly, which makes what happened after he died even more incredible.
The famous trunk.
The trunk, yes. So in 1935, when Pessoa passed away, this trunk was discovered, and we're not talking a little shoebox. We mean a proper big trunk.
Stuffed full.
Stuffed is an understatement. It contained over 25,000 items.
25,000. Just let that sink in.
It's mind-boggling. Poems, letters, journals, scraps of prose, philosophical notes, just fragments everywhere. A literal mountain of unpublished, often totally unorganized material, just waiting.
An entire hidden literary continent.
Perfectly put. And it was right there within this vast, chaotic collection that the Book of Disquiet was found, along with so much else. It wasn't just a discovery. It was like starting a major archaeological dig into someone's soul. A whole lifetime of solitary creation suddenly brought into the light.
And you know, this posthumous fame, this whole story of the trunk, it's not just a quirky anecdote about some recluse, if you think about the bigger picture. It really highlights something profound about, well, true artistic dedication, doesn't it? Creating just for the sake of creation. Not for fame, not for an audience, maybe not even for yourself in a conscious way, but just because you have to. It's the sheer act of expression itself.
That's a really powerful point. Creating because it's an inner necessity.
Exactly. And the fact that the Book of Disquiet itself, the thing we have now, was found incomplete and unorganized. And that the published versions we read are basically something of an estimation because Pessoa's own plans for it were so random and confused.
Yeah, they had to piece it together.
Right. But strangely, that actually suits the book. It fits perfectly with its inherent tone and atmosphere.
How so?
Well, think about it. It's a book about disquiet, about fragmentation, uncertainty, the messiness of existence and identity. And it emerges from this jumbled, disordered collection of papers. The very mystery and chaos surrounding its discovery, its physical state, it perfectly mirrors the disquiet it explores.
Huh. So the form reflects the content.
Almost perfectly. It's as if the book's chaotic genesis is part of its meaning. It embodies the very uncertainty and fragmentation it describes, making it feel incredibly authentic, wouldn't you say?
That's brilliant. I hadn't thought of it quite like that, but it makes total sense. The disorder isn't a flaw, it's part of the point.
Kind of, yeah.
And that idea of fragmentation, of multiple selves almost, brings us perfectly to maybe Pessoa's most revolutionary idea. The concept of heteronyms.
Ah, yes. This is absolutely key to understanding him.
It really is. And we need to be clear here, especially for anyone new to Pessoa. A heteronym is not the same as a pseudonym.
Right. Good distinction to make up front.
So let's unpack this. A pseudonym is basically just a pen name, right? Like George Orwell was really Eric Blair, but it's still the same person writing, just under a different name. The author's identity behind the mask is singular.
Correct. Same author, different label.
But a heteronym, oh, that's something else entirely. Imagine a writer not just creating characters in a story, but creating entirely different writers. Other poets, other authors who have their own completely distinct lives, their own personalities, their own biographies, even their own unique writing styles.
It's like birthing other authors from within yourself.
Exactly. Pessoa created these heteronym poets who had, and I'm quoting here, their own styles, biographies, and personalities, as if they really were distinct individuals who were born, lived, and died apart from their creator. It's like he wasn't just writing as them, he generated them as separate literary beings.
Fully formed artistic personas.
Totally. And the sheer scale of it is just wow. Pessoa created 72 distinct heteronyms.
72. It's almost unbelievable.
Isn't it? 72 different voices, perspectives, life stories, all coming from this one man. It wasn't just a literary party trick. It felt like this profound act of, I don't know, self-multiplication. Like his inner world was so vast, so populated with different possibilities that one single Fernando Pessoa just couldn't contain it all.
And this is precisely where it gets so philosophically rich. Because what's truly fascinating here is the depth of this concept. It suggests very strongly a fragmented self, an exploration of what identity even is by looking at it through all these different lenses.
Well, right, like asking, who am I really if I can be all these different people?
Exactly. It fundamentally challenges that idea we usually have of a single, stable, unified self. Instead, it suggests maybe personality is more like a spectrum or a collection of potential selves coexisting.
That's a heavy thought.
It is. And among those 72, our sources mention 4 really predominant ones, 3 poets, Alberto Cairo, Ricardo Reis, and Alvaro de Campos.
Can you give us a quick sketch of them?
Sure. So Alberto Cairo was presented as this sort of shepherd poet, a master of simple, direct, nature-focused poetry. Almost anti-intellectual, very sensory, embodying this kind of pure, untroubled perspective on reality. Yeah. Then you had Ricardo Reis. He was depicted as a doctor, a classicist, a stoic. He wrote these very formal, measured odes about, the fleeting nature of life, the wisdom of accepting fate calmly. Very different feel.
Total opposite, almost.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And then there was Alvaro de Campos. He was supposedly a naval engineer, educated in Glasgow, a futurist. His poetry was full of energy, long lines, Whitman-esque, embracing modern technology, the rush of city life, often quite explosive and emotional, almost chaotic sometimes.
Yeah, so 3 completely different styles and outlooks.
Completely. And then crucially, there's the 4th major figure, Bernardo Soares, the author attributed with the Book of Disquiet.
Right. The main man for today's discussion.
Exactly. And if we connect this whole heteronym thing to the bigger picture, it really isn't just some quirky literary device. It's a profound statement about human personality, about consciousness itself, about the many facets that can exist within one person, and how art can be a way to explore, maybe even activate those different facets. It's like Pessoa mapped his own inner universe by giving voice to all its inhabitants. It suggests maybe, just maybe, to truly know yourself, you have to become more than yourself.
That's a fascinating way to put it, and it leads us perfectly to Bernardo Soares, the specific heteronym, or maybe semi-heteronym, behind the Book of Disquiet.
Right. Semi-heteronym's a good term for him.
Because Pessoa himself said Soares was the one closest to himself. He wasn't quite as distinct, perhaps, as Cairo or Campos. Pessoa even describes Soares as a mutilation of my personality.
Which is a striking phrase.
It really is. Or even more tellingly, he called Soares me minus reason and affectivity.
Okay, let's pause there. Me minus reason and affectivity. What does that actually mean? Because that feels central to understanding Soares in the book.
I think it's crucial. So let's try to unpack that for everyone. To be minus reason, what would that be like? It suggests operating without the usual filters of logic, maybe critical analysis, the kind of structured thought most of us use to navigate the world. It's like a state of pure, direct observation, maybe, taking things in without immediately judging or categorizing them intellectually.
Like raw perception, unfiltered by logic.
Yeah, something like that. And then minus affectivity.
Yeah.
That suggests being stripped of maybe strong emotional attachments, personal biases, sentimental responses. It's like seeing and feeling things with a kind of exposed nerve without the usual emotional padding or instinctive reactions.
So a state of heightened sensitivity but emotional detachment.
Possibly. It allows for this almost brutal honesty in observation, doesn't it? A stark clarity that cuts through social niceties and personal comfort zones. And you can see how that perspective, being minus reason and affectivity, would naturally lead to the deep disquiet that just permeates the book. It's like experiencing existence stripped bare of our usual coping mechanisms, our intellectual and emotional frameworks.
That makes a lot of sense. It explains the tone. And it's interesting that Soares, as a heteronym, apparently evolved earlier and lasted longer than any of the others. The Book of Disquiet really was his life's work, in a way.
His sole output, almost.
Yeah. And to give us a bit more context for Soares' perspective, the sources really describe the kind of place where the narrator, who was presumably Pessoa, or another aspect of him, observed Soares.
Where did he hang out?
He frequented certain respectable taverns in Lisbon, Specifically, the source describes a quiet type of place, the kind that attracts both the eccentric as the nondescript. Quiet corners where people can just sort of
Hmm.
be.
Okay, I can picture that. A quiet, perhaps slightly melancholic place.
Exactly. And this raises that question again. How does a life spent in quiet observation in such a seemingly mundane setting lead to these incredibly profound, far-reaching reflections? The magic, maybe, is precisely in that intense focus on the ordinary, finding the universe in the everyday.
Finding the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Precisely. And Soares himself is described with some really striking details. Thin, maybe in his 30s, a bit hunched, outwardly very unremarkable, but his pale, unremarkable features somehow hinted at this deep, unplaceable suffering.
Hmm. Hidden depths.
Definitely. He apparently ate very little, smoked cheap tobacco, and this seems key. He watched other people, but not in a creepy way. He watched them with genuine intrigued interest, not scrutiny.
So observing, not judging.
Exactly. That posture of quiet, non-judgmental observation feels crucial to understanding the kind of raw, unfiltered insights he captures in his writing. He wasn't sizing people up. He was just absorbing the human scene like a camera, recording it all with meticulous, detached precision. And there's this specific little story and anecdote about how the narrator first really connected with Soares. It started with something totally banal. A street scuffle outside the restaurant. A fight between two guys.
Happens all the time in cities.
Right. So the customers, including the narrator and Soares, rush over to the windows to look. The narrator makes some trivial comment, oh, look at that, or whatever. And Soares replies in kind. But his voice, it's described as dull and tremulous.
Dull and tremulous.
Yeah. And the narrator perceives it as the voice of one who hopes for nothing because all hope is vain.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
It really is. Sets the tone. Anyway, later, through more casual conversations, Soares eventually reveals that he writes. He explains, apparently, that he passed the night writing because, well, he had nowhere to go and nothing to do, no friends to visit, and no interest in reading books.
So writing out of sheer solitude and maybe boredom.
Mhm.
Or necessity.
Exactly. It paints such a vivid picture, doesn't it? This solitary, intensely internal existence that gave birth to this extraordinary book. It wasn't something done for fame or an audience. It seems like it was an absolute necessity for him, an unavoidable outpouring from this overactive, maybe understimulated mind. And the book itself reflects that. It's a fragmented journal and collection of philosophical musings, a perfect fit for its creator, a distillation of a life lived intensely, but almost entirely inside his own head.
Okay, so we have this picture of Pessoa, the man behind the curtain, and Soares, this fascinating semi-heteronym, living this quiet life of observation. Now, let's really dive into the core of the Book of Disquiet itself, the key philosophical themes, the big ideas that make it resonate so powerfully, even today.
Let's do it. This is where it gets really juicy.
Right. So the central theme, obviously, is right there in the title, Disquiet. But what is this disquiet? It's clearly more than just, feeling sad or a bit anxious.
Much more. It's deeper than that.
It feels like a restless, pervasive, almost fundamental existential unease, like a background hum of being unsettled by the very nature of reality and your own place in it, a deep awareness maybe of the gap between the outside world and your inner experience. Does that sound right?
That's a very good way to put it. It is existential. And for anyone listening who might be new to this kind of thinking, the Book of Disquiet is often called a classic of existential literature.
Okay, good point. Let's define that quickly. What does existential literature actually mean in simple terms?
Well, at its core, it's literature that grapples with the big fundamental questions of human existence, often without giving you easy answers, mind you.
Like, why are we here kind of question.
Exactly. Things like, what's the meaning of life, if there even is one? What's our purpose in what often feels like a pretty indifferent universe? How do we deal with the sheer weight of freedom, the responsibility of making choices? What even is the self, especially in a world that can feel absurd or meaningless? Existential literature explores that feeling of just being here, the experience of consciousness itself. And often, it confronts feelings of alienation, loneliness, the absurdity of it all, the anxiety of choice. You can think of it like reading someone's incredibly thoughtful, brutally honest journal where they're trying to figure out, who am I and why am I here? By looking inward, observing the world unflinchingly, even if the conclusions aren't exactly comforting. It's about the raw experience of being conscious.
That's a great explanation. Thank you. It sets the stage perfectly for Pessoa's own obsessions.
Absolutely. And connecting directly to that existential core, Pessoa himself was deeply preoccupied with what he called the schism between our concrete and our abstract natures. He had this fantastic Portuguese phrase for it, carne inteligente.
Carne inteligente. Intelligent flesh.
Exactly, intelligent flesh. It points to this profound split, this tension within us that comes from our unique human ability to be self-aware.
Okay, so concrete versus abstract nature. Let's break that down step by step and make it super clear.
Good idea. So first, our concrete nature. That's basically our physical body, our actions in the world, our daily routines, the tangible stuff around us. It's the part of us that eats, sleeps, walks down the street, interacts with objects, exists in the physical realm of cause and effect.
Got it. The physical doing part of us.
Right. Then second, there's our abstract nature. This is everything to do with our inner world. Our thoughts, our self-consciousness, our ability to reflect on things, to imagine, to analyze ourselves, to feel complex emotions. It's the part that processes experience, asks questions, dreams, worries, feels joy or angst about existence itself.
The thinking, feeling, self-aware part.
Precisely. And the schism, then, is the gap, the tension, the sometimes painful disconnect between these two natures. Pessoa, writing as Soares, often expressed this wish that he could just be a simple, unreflecting animal.
Like a cat sleeping in the sun.
Exactly. To be untroubled by the constant churn of self-consciousness, the endless analyzing of your own existence. Imagine the relief, maybe, of just being without the burden of constantly thinking about being, without the self-awareness that so often brings doubt, anxiety, disquiet.
Yeah, I can see the appeal sometimes.
And this is crucial, and he also saw that this uniquely human ability to reflect, to analyze ourselves, was the source of pretty much all our deepest pleasures in life, too.
Ah, the flip side.
Right. For instance, he famously described watching a sunset not just as seeing pretty colors, but as an intellectual experience.
Interesting. How so?
Meaning it engages the mind, triggers complex thoughts, feelings, associations that a simple, unreflecting animal could never have. It's our abstract nature interacting with the concrete world to create a richer experience. But of course, this same capacity for reflection is also the source of its pain.
Because we can overthink, worry, feel alienated.
Exactly. Hence his very typical kind of wry little addition to that thought, although sometimes ill. Like, this self-awareness is amazing, but yeah, sometimes it makes us sick with anxiety or melancholy.
So it's a double-edged sword.
Completely. And it raises this really central question the book explores implicitly. How do we navigate this inherent internal division between just existing physically and constantly thinking about existing, between the immediate reality outside and the vast, often troubling landscape inside our own heads? It's a tension that really defines so much of the human condition, would you say?
Absolutely. That tension is the disquiet in many ways. And the book explores other major themes, too, things critics have really latched onto, showing the unique way Soares and Pessoa saw the world. For instance, there's this fascinating theme of boredom.
Ah, yes, but not boringly.
Exactly. That's the key distinction. Paul Bailey pointed this out, saying, boredom informs it, but not boringly. Pessoa loved the minutiae of what we care to deem the ordinary life, and that love enriches and deepens his art.
So it's not about complaining about being bored.
Not at all. It's about finding profound meaning, maybe even a strange kind of beauty, within the mundane, the everyday, the seemingly boring stuff. Soares isn't out looking for thrilling adventures. He finds his entire universe in just watching a Lisbon street corner, or the way sunlight hits a wall, or the faces passing by in that tavern.
It's about the quality of attention paid to the ordinary.
Precisely. It's the idea that the most routine moments can unlock the deepest insights if you just pay close enough attention, if you engage your abstract nature with the concrete details. It's transforming the mundane into something magnificent through the sheer power of internal reflection.
That's beautifully put.
And then Philip Pullman highlights another core feeling in the book, mystery and misgivings. He said the Book of Disquiet is the very book to read when you wake at 3 a.m. and can't get back to sleep. Mysteries, misgivings, fears and dreams and wonderment like nothing else.
Ah, the 3 a.m. thoughts. We all know those.
Right. It taps directly into that almost universal human experience, doesn't it? Lying awake in the dark when the world is quiet and all the usual distractions are gone. And your deepest thoughts, anxieties, strange ideas, and existential questions just bubble up.
The mind racing.
Exactly. And the book doesn't try to solve those mysteries or calm those fears. Instead, it sort of offers companionship in that state. It gives voice to those internal wanderings, validates them, explores them, making you feel maybe a little less alone in your own private disquiet. It's like having a deeply thoughtful, equally unsettled friend sitting with you in the dark.
A companion for the soul's midnight hour.
Perfectly said. Then there's this unique blend the sources mention, melancholy and absurdity. Apparently, Pessoa was genuinely entertained by the comedic aspects of our short, troubled existences.
Finding humor in the bleakness.
Seems like it. He saw the hilarious absurdity of the human predicament just as clearly as he saw its inherent melancholy pointlessness. It's not just pure sadness, it's this profound, almost wry humor that acknowledges how futile and brief life might be, but still finds something amusing, or maybe just fascinatingly strange in the way we all struggle through it.
Like watching a tragic comedy unfold.
Yeah. Imagine Soares in his tavern watching people with their grand plans and petty squabbles all playing out against this vast, indifferent cosmic backdrop. He sees the tragedy, the melancholy, but also the sheer hilarious absurdity of it all. It creates this unique emotional cocktail in the book. Deep sadness is never far from a kind of knowing, almost detached smile.
A very particular flavor of melancholy.
Definitely. And building right on that, one critic came up with this amazing phrase to describe the book's feeling: exhilarating lugubriousness.
Exhilarating lugubriousness. That sounds like a complete contradiction.
Right. Lugubriousness, just to be clear for everyone, means like deeply mournful, gloomy, excessively sad, or dismal. So how on earth can deep gloom be exhilarating? That seems impossible. How does Pessoa pull that off?
Ah, well, that's where the real magic, the genius of it, lies, I think. And it gets back to that idea of finding beauty or vitality, even in discomfort or sadness. It's not about being sad despite everything. It's about finding a strange kind of energy through confronting life's inherent sadness, its potential meaninglessness, head on.
So embracing the darkness makes it less dark.
Sort of. Pessoa, through Soares, invites us not just to feel the disquiet, but to really sit with it, to dissect it, analyze it, pick apart the threads of our own melancholy and anxiety. And in that very act of deep, fearless introspection, even if what you find is uncomfortable, there's a weird kind of liberation.
Like the thrill of understanding, even if the understanding is bleak.
Exactly. It's the energy that comes from active engagement rather than passive suffering. You're not just feeling the gloom, you're wrestling with it, analyzing it, almost making friends with it in a strange way. And that active intellectual and emotional engagement, paradoxically, can feel incredibly stimulating, almost invigorating. It's transforming suffering into insight, which can be weirdly uplifting. It's a core paradox that makes the book so unique and, for many people, so powerful.
Okay, that makes sense. It's the energy of active thought versus passive feeling. Wow. And finally, George Steiner sums up the book's structure perfectly, calling it a haunting mosaic of dreams, psychological notations, autobiographical vignettes, shards of literary theory and criticism and maxims.
A mosaic, that's a great image for it.
Isn't it? Like a mosaic, each piece is distinct, right? Sometimes it's just a short reflection, sometimes a detailed memory or observation, sometimes a sharp philosophical statement. But when you step back, all these fragments come together to form this incredibly rich, complex, and deeply resonant picture of a single consciousness sprawling across the pages. It invites you, the reader, to piece together its intricate patterns and find your own meaning. And that fragmented form, again, perfectly mirrors the fragmented inner self that Pessoa was so obsessed with exploring.
Beautifully summarized. And all these elements, the themes, the tone, the structure, they all contribute to the book's incredible enduring impact, and why it still speaks so powerfully to readers today.
Right, despite being totally obscure in his lifetime.
Which is still amazing to think about.
He's now huge. The Times called him Portugal's greatest poet. He's recognized everywhere as one of the great figures of 20th century European modernism.
Absolutely central to modernism. And maybe for listeners, just a quick reminder. Modernism in literature, roughly early to mid 20th century, was this big shift away from traditional storytelling. Modernist writers often use things like fragmentation, stream of consciousness, really diving deep into psychology and inner states, rather than focusing on straightforward plots or clear narratives. Think Joyce, Woolf, Eliot.
And Pessoa fits right in there.
Perfectly. His work has all those hallmarks. The fragmented self, the deep introspection, the questioning of reality, the innovative forms. He was right there at the cutting edge.
And his influence seems really wide-ranging. Critics compare him to all sorts of other literary giants, which shows how unique he was hard to pin down.
Exactly. He gets compared often to Franz Kafka, for example.
Oh, interesting. Why Kafka?
Well, for that similar vibe of petit bourgeois conformity on the outside, that dapper, quiet clerk masking this incredibly rich, often disturbing inner life, like Kafka's characters trapped in bureaucratic nightmares but experiencing these profound, surreal internal struggles.
Okay, I see that connection. The ordinary exterior hiding extraordinary depths.
Precisely. He also gets linked to T.S. Eliot, another giant of modernism, maybe for the use of fragmentation, the exploration of urban alienation and angst, that deep sense of spiritual or psychological unease in the modern world.
Makes sense. Who else?
Oh, the list goes on. Beckett, for the existential bleakness and absurdity, perhaps. Baudelaire, for the urban melancholy and exploration of darker sides of life. Melville, for the deep philosophical dives. Borges, for the intellectual complexity, the labyrinths of the mind. Even Gombrowicz, for the philosophical games with identity and form.
Wow, that's quite a roster. Beckett, Borges, Kafka.
It really highlights the sheer depth and breadth and the unique originality of what Pessoa is doing. He touches on themes and uses techniques that resonate across all these different major figures, yet his voice remains distinctly his own. He defies any simple box.
So, why does this book, written by a reclusive Portuguese clerk almost a century ago, still have such a grip on people today? What's its enduring appeal?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think connecting it to the bigger picture, a huge part of its appeal is its uncanny ability to just resonate with our own internal lives, our own quiet moments, our own doubts and reflections.
It feels relatable, even in its strangeness.
Deeply relatable. John Lanchester had this great quote calling it the perfect antidote for our times. He said it's an antidote to a time that celebrates fame, success, stupidity, convenience, and noise.
Ooh, I like that. An antidote to noise.
Exactly. In a world that's constantly shouting at us, demanding our attention, celebrating the external, the superficial, the successful image, Pessoa offers this profound counter-narrative, a celebration of the inner world, a quiet refuge where deep thought, introspection, even melancholy aren't just tolerated, but are seen as the very essence of being human.
It gives value to the quiet internal life.
Tremendous value. Octavio Paz, another Nobel laureate, had this wonderful description of Pessoa. He called him a solemn investigator of futile things.
Investigator of futile things? That sounds almost insulting, but maybe it's not.
I don't think it is, not the way Paz meant it. He said Pessoa was someone who, in his helplessness, creates a world in order to discover his true identity. It suggests that maybe it's precisely by focusing on the small, the mundane, the seemingly futile details of everyday existence and inner thought that we actually get closer to understanding who we are.
Huh. Finding meaning in the meaningless.
Perhaps. And it raises this really important question for all of us living now, doesn't it? In our world of constant information overload, endless scrolling, relentless focus on the outward projection of self, can we, like Bernardo Soares, still find profound insight in our own ordinary moments, in our own internal reflections? Can we discover our real identities by daring to delve inward, even if, maybe especially if, what we find there is disquiet?
That's a challenging thought.
It is. But ultimately, I think the Book of Disquiet allows us as readers to locate the echo of our own disquiet about our life in the world we occupy. It invites us on this mesmerizing, sometimes unsettling, but ultimately deeply rewarding journey alongside one of the most fascinating minds in modern literature. It's an invitation to recognize ourselves in its fragments, maybe, and to understand that our own quiet moments of internal questioning aren't just okay, they're profoundly significant.
Okay, wow. That's a lot to think about. So let's try to wrap this up. What does this all mean for us? Let's recap the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive into Fernando Pessoa and the Book of Disquiet.
Good idea. Let's crystallize it.
All right. First, Fernando Pessoa himself, this Portuguese literary genius, totally obscure during his life, who left behind this just immense hidden body of work discovered in that famous trunk after his death. Over 25,000 items. A hidden treasure, literally.
An astonishing story in itself.
Second, his most unique, maybe most mind-bending contribution, the heteronyms. Remember, these weren't just pen names. They were entirely distinct literary personalities he created, poets. Writers each with their own life story, their own style, their own philosophy. Like Alberto Cairo, Ricardo Reis, Alvaro de Campos.
And of course, Bernardo Soares.
And Bernardo Soares, yes. The author of the Book of Disquiet. Pessoa called him the closest to himself, that fascinating idea of Me minus reason and affectivity, giving us this incredibly raw, unfiltered perspective on existence.
The lens through which we see the disquiet.
Third, the book itself, the Book of Disquiet. It's not a novel, not a traditional memoir. It's this fragmented, deeply intimate diary, this collection of philosophical musings. It dives headfirst into that feeling of existential disquiet. It explores that tension Pessoa was obsessed with between our physical, concrete selves and our thinking, abstract selves, the intelligent flesh.
A core human division.
And crucially, it shows us the incredibly rich inner life that can be found even in the most mundane, ordinary circumstances. It transforms the everyday into a landscape for profound thought.
Finding the universe in a Lisbon tavern.
Exactly. And finally, its enduring relevance. Why does it still matter? Because the Book of Disquiet is this timeless exploration of identity, of the search for meaning, of the human condition itself. It's been called that powerful antidote to our noisy, success-driven modern world. It invites us, maybe even challenges us, to slow down, to look inward, to reflect on our own inner world, and maybe find our own kind of meaning in the quiet corners of our own consciousness. It reminds us powerfully that sometimes the deepest, most important journeys happen entirely within ourselves.
Beautifully summed up, and perhaps that leads us to a final thought, a question for you, the listener, to take away and mull over.
Ooh, okay. Let's hear it.
In our constantly connected world, this world that's always demanding our attention, outward screens, notifications, social pressures, what might we discover if we intentionally made space, like Bernardo Soares did, to simply observe, to reflect, and maybe even to embrace the quiet, sometimes uncomfortable disquiet of our own minds? Is it possible there's an entire hidden universe waiting to be explored right there, inside each of us, if only we dared to give it the time and the quiet attention it needs?
That's a profound question to end on, a challenge almost. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the fascinating world of Fernando Pessoa and the Book of Disquiet. We really hope this conversation has sparked some thoughts, maybe given you a new perspective, and perhaps even inspired you to pick up this remarkable, unique book for yourself.
It's definitely worth the journey.
Absolutely. Until next time on the deep dive, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.